call to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Trustee Rubin?
Yes.
Trustee Hallwax?
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos?
Yeah.
Okay, first order of business for our finance committee is public comment. Anybody here that would like to make a comment? Now's the time. No one, okay. In that case, could I get a motion to approve the minutes, or does anyone have any comments?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Okay, minutes are approved, and that brings us to the best part of the meeting.
Okay.
Please tell us about our
Here
financial.
we go, financial report. So I included in the packet tonight is the February treasurer's report. So we're 2 months in, that's just over 16% of the way through the year. Property taxes continue to be a good story, more than last year by about 427,000, largely due to the fact that bills are on time, which is good. We're at 20.3% of budget, and we're continuing to see property taxes come in at a steady pace. So that's good news from a cash flow standpoint. Sales taxes are more than last year and more than monthly budget. This month alone was 22% higher than last year. So this is for November sales. We are requesting documents or reporting from the Illinois Department of Revenue to get more information. On a high level, it looks like a miscellaneous sales category, so it's not related to any of the traditional categories that we would see. Which leads me to believe that it may be something kind of a one-time sale. I know we talked a lot about turkeys last year, so it may be something odd, but we are digging into that to determine.
Of turkeys.
Putting a lot of turkeys.
$40,000 worth of, that's $4 million worth of turkeys. It's a lot of turkeys.
So it's not, I'm not suggesting. it's
Somebody killed a
turkeys.
big piece of art too.
Yes. So we are gonna we'll dig into that, and hopefully we'll have an answer, a better answer for you next. So,
Yeah, because that's one of those that you go, okay, fine, but that's not part of
it's
the
not a
regular.
real, not a real
Okay.
trend,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but 2 months in a row now, higher than the prior year, so that's good news. Places for eating tax, parking fees, ambulance fees, garbage service fees and sewer charges were all higher than last year, and monthly budget charges, which it's a good, strong start for the year. And then our expenditures were higher than last year, but only 14% of budget. So we're still holding the line on that. On the water fund side, still a good news story for this time of year. Both volumetric and fixed charge revenues were higher than last year. About 10% on volumetric revenue, which is not surprising for this time of year. Obviously, no one's irrigating. And then fixed charge revenue is pretty much right on target of what we would expect to see. Expenditures are higher than last year at 8% of budget, and they're up by just shy of 24,000. And we hand it over to
But
Steph.
they're in line with expectations.
Yes, in line with expectations.
Thank you. Just a brief update on the pump house project. Everything is moving along. Say as expected, but everything is moving along. We have our permits submitted for MWRD and to the county, so we're just waiting to hear back from them. We're gonna hear more about the bids on Thursday in detail, but you already know that we are slightly below budget there, so that's great news. The building is ready for removal. The asbestos was removed. We are currently putting in temporary electric, and the tree removal started today for the trees that are being removed where the clubhouse is getting built. So everything is going according to plan there. We did find a mobile food trailer that we are going to purchase. We also see full detail on that memo, but just to let you know, it was a very long and thorough process, and we have the best option available, and it's a better investment than spending twice that much and renting. So we will own this. We can use it in the future because it's mobile for special events, et cetera, or we can resell it at the end. And then all the academy programs are being finalized with our instructors, so we're gonna have a robust program again for juniors, ladies, and beginner programs. And we're open for business.
Just in time for it to snow tomorrow.
just in time for the start.
What? It's supposed to snow.
Yeah, but I saw folks on 18th Fairway today.
Yeah, we had
Beautiful
some
day.
play.
I wouldn't play today. I walked around for a couple of days just to check it out. It's actually pretty good shape.
They did a
And all
great
the-
job.
Those trees, I haven't been there since I remember. There's a lot of trees gone.
From the storm.
No, I don't down yet.
Oh, from today.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a, we've lost a lot during the storm too.
They were doing that little.
Thank you. Okay, so it's too early in the year to really have much activity in the debt service, motor fuel tax fund and capital projects fund. So at this point, expenditures are very minimal. As expected, as the warmer weather starts and our capital projects pick up, we'll start to see that activity pick up as well. On the personnel standpoint, we're seeing last year's trends continue. With base salaries being higher than last year, still within budgetary expectations. Primarily good news because we're filling vacant positions. We're still having elevated overtime, especially in the public safety department, as we're getting those public safety officers fully trained in the academies. And we are seeing pension costs higher this year than this time last year, and that's directly tied to property tax receipts. Because we're doing well in property taxes, we're also contributing to the pension fund on a more timely basis, which is good news as well. Moving on to projections, annual projection side, when we look at just revenue performance versus the budget, the general fund is doing well, 668,000 higher than budget. That's what the trend is running right now, assuming that we hit all of our revenue targets for the rest of the year. Primary driver of that is obviously property taxes. That's the lion's share of that number. And the water fund is running about 59,000 higher than what we expected. When we add expenditures into that equation, we're pretty much right on target with the general fund, still planning to draw down 4.6 million, projecting 4.6 million, that was budgeted 4.8. The water fund is showing a $2 million projection. We had a planned drawdown of 3.1. That number is going to change as we start to see bid results and things come in for the water fund. The fund reserves at the month end, unaudited. The general fund is sitting at 15.9 million, which is 53% of operating expenditures. The water fund is at 6.2, which is at 100% fund balance. We'll see that draw down as we start to begin the water main projects this year. One note, as I am saying that these numbers are unaudited, we did complete our final field work last week. So the auditors were in 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and then last week. So we do expect to get a draft report in the next month. We will have the auditors and the actuary come to likely the May or June finance committee, depending on the timing of that draft. But so far, very minimal feedback from the auditors, which is usually a good sign. When we talk about inflationary and economic impacts, these have largely calmed down from what we saw several years ago, but we still have a few isolated items that are hanging out there. Truck 20, that outfitting, I know we talked about that a while ago. We're still waiting on that from 2024, so that's just an oddity that we're trying to get that off of our plate. And then we talked last month about the leaf back, needing to order it now to get a fall delivery. And also just the unknown impact of tariffs that are hanging out there. I don't know that anyone really knows what that's going to look like for us, but that is on the forefront of our mind. Commodities are running lower than last year. They're at 23.5% of budget. Nothing to be alarmed about. I think this is just timing. And similarly, contractual services are running less than last year at only 10.5% of budget. Thursday, we have a little bond sale planned. So we are going to have a live auction at 10 a.m. So Phil and Stella and I will be watching that. The Village of Buffalo Grove, who is also AAA rated, just issued $24 million yesterday. They had a live auction as well. And pretty solid results. They had 23 bids from 8 different firms.
What was the term on there?
Theirs was 20 years.
And we're 20.
So ours is 25. So Buffalo Grove got a 4% rate. So we are anticipating, we're hoping for similar results because there's clearly a lot of interest in the market in this right now. But we are expecting a rate between 4 and 4.25 for a 25-year term. So we'll see where that's at. We did put a draft bond ordinance in Thursday night's agenda. So following the sale Thursday morning, our bond council will finalize that bond ordinance and we'll put the final ordinance at your place before the village board meeting. And we'll send out an email to let you know where the results are prior to that. Any questions on the treasurer's report or any of the bond sale items?
No, only that I think this is gonna be our largest bond issue ever and our longest term. So, single bond issue. So we're excited. Anything history. Yes.
All right, well, okay to move on to CIP?
Yes, please.
All right. Move it over to Monica for CIP updates. Right, so the projects coming before you are above the village board meeting for this Thursday. So we have quite a few purchases, but also some of the larger studies, specifically the stormwater management plan. As you remember from the last meeting, we talked about, we did kind of an extensive interview process, and so we're awarding that contract. And
We're not.
any questions on the items that are going to be awarded for Thursday?
Can you go back there? real quick?
Hold on one second. I apologize.
Back to.
The other big
Page
item,
45 of the
Um,
packet.
which I'll be talking to, is the all trades award for the golf course. So I talked to a little bit earlier, those bids came in where we wanted them to be, slightly under, but we won't be left.
Love to pay for the privilege of continuing on with the county.
Pay for the tree.
Yeah, right.
Updates to the timeline, and I think that's what Margaret was pulling up, the changes. So we had about 6 items that have shifted in the timeline that I just want to bring to your attention. The first one is the Village Hall charging stations. We thought we were going to be more prepared with this one, but we're going to take the time and go out and get an engineering bid about running power from Village Hall. I think we're finding value in replacing some of the panels there. And so we just want an electrical engineer to come in, do an assessment and actually design for a future build. We feel like now is the right time to do that. But also keeping in mind, access to that side of the building is a little difficult right now. And so we just want to be mindful of when we go out to bid and want to award this, that they are going to have access, that those spaces are going to be available. So just kind of keeping tabs on the project. We're kind of expecting that to be the fall construction. The Public Works garage improvements, this one shifted up. So we thought we were going to start construction in April, and we're actually, a lot of the decisions were made about, design and new appliances that are going to be going into the Public Works kitchen. And so we started that work already in March. The next one is pickup number 1. This one arrived quicker than expected. The plow that's associated with pickup number 1 still needs to be purchased and installed. That will be ready prior to next year's snow and ice control season. So we just moved that up in the timeline because that truck is being utilized. It's ready to go. So it's been received and it's in use. The next one is the emergency weather sign replacement. Do you want to talk to, I mean, we went out to bid. The bids came back.
Results were better than expected.
Yeah.
So we're ready to work that tomorrow night. Construction should begin during the summer.
How long is it lasting?
It'll be quick.
They're gonna use the existing, poles, mounts, et cetera.
Correct. The existing poles, we'll have a technology upgrade here at the Public Safety Department that will be able to automatically trigger the alerts and attack National Weather Service issues, tornado warning affecting our area. And the existing operation at Glencoe will not be affected. They'll still be able to send them off if there's any issues that they see.
The next one too is also public safety, a vehicle purchase, vehicle 667. We're just ready to purchase that sooner than we anticipated, so we shifted that forward. I think that previously been planned for in April, and that will be on this week's agenda. The last one is the IT network improvements, the installation for the air fiber network. We ended up shifting that one out a month, and Amari, if you want to speak to the details of that.
Yes, so we moved it because the design of the pole that actually gonna hold on to the antenna needs to be redesigned. I found a really cool company in Texas that's owned by the veterans, so I stay in contact with them. We're designing the pole for the antenna just for us specifically, and the antenna itself needed to change. It's gonna be a little bit less strength of the signal itself, of the radio signal. But it's actually gonna be held on to, the wind sway is not gonna be as big as it would be with a bigger antenna. So that's why there's a little bit of setback with that. And also in our area is the ice was a very huge concern of the sway for the antenna as well and the pole, so.
So that's our radio transmissions, right? For police and fire.
It's gonna be for a water plant, so it's gonna be.
Oh, and they'll come to our house with it as well,
The,
for the monitors in our house.
No, it's internet connection between Village Hall and the water plant.
yeah,
Mhm.
the internet connection, yeah.
I'm thinking of the water meters,
Yeah.
which we do have an antenna there.
Yeah.
This antenna will be in a similar location at the lookout at
Right.
the end of park.
And this is just the village to water.
Water plant.
It's our own network connections.
And on the water plant side, I know Alex is gonna be putting up some additional antennas, but actually it's gonna be taller, the pole itself. So he's gonna be attaching the antennas that he has currently there to have a better signal.
You're Joe, I think you're recalling that a couple of years ago, we did install an additional antenna for at the end of Longwood for our meters to ensure that they had a full, that with all of our topography along the lake, we had had issues with connectivity. That's been resolved with that new antenna that was installed.
It's easier to run the air fiber than run cables.
It's less expensive too.
Yes.
And I think with the last multiple instances this year already of like 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, I think we've realized that needs to have a little bit more.
Experience, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be sturdier than what was originally
Right.
designed.
And also at that point, the water plant is gonna be putting on our local network over here, so all of us is gonna be almost sharing the same network. At that point with the air fiber, which is very beneficial to security of the environment.
They're on a different network.
Well, they have a different connection to the internet, and then they connect with us.
So
with
that
the
what you
VPN.
monitor.
Right, so, yeah.
Just confirm that we've got security all over this thing.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes. Sometimes there's a complaint that security is too tight.
Not from me.
That is all updates I have on this week. If there's any questions?
Water main replacement started yesterday. And done.
Did, yes. We're officially moving dirt out there and getting going.
How many complaints about the traffic stop? Just not being able to get through.
I have not received any complaints, but
It's been open.
to be fair, yeah, it has been open, so traffic will traffic impacts will really ramp up this summer.
They are gonna try to take advantage of spring break next week, with reduced traffic that takes place during that time to get into the street a little bit. And impact traffic when there's less traffic, so.
All right. What else, if anything? All right, so other than the bond issue, anything else moving apace from your perspective?
Far so good, although the pace these days is a little bit hard to keep up with, with everything that's going on. Bill and I were talking the other day that it is time to have our investment advisors back. So we'll be scheduling that likely May. I'd like to avoid June just because that's gonna be a heavy meeting for all of you with the actuary and the auditors. So you can spread the love a little bit, but I would like to bring our investment advisors in and just have a more in-depth conversation about that and maybe revisit our investment policy just to make sure that the committee is comfortable with where we're at. So I'd see that on the horizon.
Is it worth mentioning the kerfuffle with that power contract?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what it is, but you've got it on your agenda Thursday night. The ratification of two contracts that relate to a power buy for the water plant and the clubhouse. We were supposed to get those contracts bids first week of March. They all submitted bids, and at the same time, there were tariff impacts that immediately threw the power commodities market into disarray. And all of the bids were pulled back while they tried to figure out what was real and what was worth being concerned about. They resubmitted bids a week later. The numbers came down slightly, which was good. But there is definitely, we anticipate volatility like that in certain things that we will buy for the foreseeable future. The interesting piece to that is that it's not just tariff driven, though that was an impact. We do import into the United States quite a bit of power from Canada. But the other big pull is that power consumption nationwide is going up pretty dramatically related to server farms, AI derived server power needs, and a series of things like that. So the environment is shifting all at the same time that there's a lot of volatility at the federal level. So that's a singular aspect. We did share that information with our federal representatives, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. They were grateful to get that information just as kind of tangible impacts to us. But we are anticipating that we're going to see impacts to vehicles and equipment, things, even things like concrete, asphalt, over time. We did not see major tariff impacts on the clubhouse bids. If we did see them, they weren't called out. They may have been built into some of that pricing. Stella and I were talking, I'm grateful now, particularly that we made the call to go to geothermal heating and cooling at the clubhouse, because that is going to have a significant impact on utility costs for what is essentially the most expensive component of utilities for that facility. But yeah, it's too soon to say with certainty exactly where and how some of these proposed and or put in place tariff structures may impact us, but we do expect that they will impact us. So we're gonna be monitoring that as we get things, as bids come through.
Forget, how long are the power contracts?
It's three full
One of them
years.
was, but one of them was a 2-year contract and one of them was a 1 year, or is that different than?
The water plant is a 2-year
Yeah.
contract, and that was strategic based on the proposed pricing.
okay.
So with the golf course, the pricing was such that a 3-year contract
Okay.
made sense, but the 3rd-year pricing that was proposed at the water plant.
Okay,
will go
that's what it
back
was.
up.
I remember there was a distinction.
And different providers for
Right.
both.
A couple other items on the horizon that I want to mention. I know we just got through it, but we're talking about starting the budget in May this year. So we heard the feedback from the board of kind of backing that
Mhm.
timeline up. So we'll be kicking that off really soon here.
Yeah, actually, we should bring,
Bring the draft calendar.
yeah,
We
next
can bring
month.
that next month.
that April.
And then the revenue analysis from the committee of the whole discussion, we are starting to get our feet wet on that. We have a couple AdFi interns that are starting soon. That'll be helping just the research effort on that. So there'll be a future presentation that'll come back to the finance committee as well. So it's still on our radar.
What, just to give you also a little insight, thanks for the reminder on budget, Nikki. We're anticipating trying to bring you the budget for approval in November instead of December. And that gives us December to be much more focused on getting those first round of contracts through. It is a very, very heavy lift for the staff in December to get everything tied up with a bow. And all of those first of the year contracts that we brought you. You've seen it for the last couple of years that a number of those agenda items, we start to get into almost double letters because there's so many of them. So we're just trying to smooth out this process internally and then smooth it out for you as well, starting the process earlier, giving us all a little bit of extra time with it. But yeah, May will really be kind of the kickoff for staff. You won't see too much until probably June.
Interns, where are they from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I used an
Administration and
acronym.
finance department.
Administration and finance.
Yeah.
We shortened into AdFi. I think Bill's a huge fan of that, but
It's fine.
we got lazy
It's fine.
internally.
They're college students.
Yes. I
Got it.
think that one of them is a Glencoe resident, right? So we received a lot of great applications.
We have 55 applicants for these 2 internship positions. And we've got an engineering intern, right? That we
Correct.
ended up hiring that person, right? Good.
Next. All right. Well, please.
With everything happening in Washington, how do we plan for uncertainty? Do we develop contingency
As
plans?
best we can, I think is the answer.
Well, there's a couple of things Nikki and I have been talking about. The reality of it is it's hard to anticipate what's coming next. There's very little roadmap that perhaps even exists. We are relying upon the fact that we have good financial policies that guided us through a number of things. It's 5 years ago this month that the village board met to hack $2.5 million out of its brand new budget that had just been approved for a stub year because the pandemic began. I would tell you that if such a circumstance came up where we were concerned about revenue flow, that given the amount, the frequency that this group meets, I'm not concerned that we would not have the ability to divert or change course and to provide you recommendations on the best way to do that, given the circumstances that would present themselves at that time. We don't rely, thankfully, heavily on federal dollars. There are grant programs and things like that, and sometimes there's flow through. from the feds to the state or to the county and to us. At this point, we're not relying heavily on that for this fiscal year. I think the difficulty is going to become understanding how the federal government may share resources in the future, especially when we start to think about some of our bigger, larger scale capital projects that may be on the horizon. So major water program investments, even roads and the like. So immediately there's no imminent threat that we're seeing, but there is a lot of haze, and trying to see through that haze to kind of understand what's coming next or may come next and how that may impact us. You know, even changes in the structure of the federal government may have impacts that we're not aware of yet. It may change labor relations. It may change a series of even employment rules, how OSHA works, how the EPA works. There may be rollbacks of EPA mandates that have been talked about that could change and bring kind of policy questions back to the board as to if the EPA amends its rules, do we want to seek to be better or different than what those EPA rules may be? So those are real questions that we don't have answers to yet, but we're looking at and monitoring. Nikki and I are both on the Northwest Municipal Conference Legislative Committee. I will say I'm a little more concerned immediately about some legislative things that are working their way through Springfield. We're going to continue to see pressure on pensions. Pension legislation is all but likely. And with that, maybe rollbacks of those tier 2 pension changes that took place in 2011. That will have a tangible and very near-term impact to us if those changes take place. So those are issues that I think we're being very mindful of. And you know, it's hard to say with the federal government. We're all operating without a net a bit.
On the pension side, I mean, we're not the only ones affected.
Not at all.
Everybody.
Right.
How are they getting support for this?
Well, it's interesting because if you talk to any mayor or manager or trustee or elected official from any municipality who's going down to Springfield and talking to legislators is telling the same story. The numbers are staggering. If they roll it back, we're talking about billions of dollars of immediate term impact to pension funds. Those changes don't have dollar figures associated with them in terms of revenues that we would get back. If you remember in 2011, when those tier 2 changes were made, the state also said, because we're fixing your pension problem somewhat, we're going to take some of what we used to send to you because we need it. That is the local government distributive fund. So we are still fighting the battle of trying to get those dollars back. That is billions of dollars worth of resources that the state is holding back from municipalities. So you have kind of, you can't operate those things in a vacuum, but the legislature is trying to. The other reality is some of these rollbacks impact the state too. Mm-hmm. And so the state is being mindful of the fact. I think there's a reason they didn't pass legislation last year. There was some thought that they were going to do that in the veto session. They didn't, because they realized that they're going to be on the hook too for pretty substantial changes in pension funding. So the state is, there are unique arguments being made by some of the lobbies in Springfield that there's an equity problem between different tier 1 and tier 2 police fire. Interestingly, they're not really talking about tier 1, tier 2, anyone else. It's mostly police fire. And that for reasons like that, modifications need to be made to kind of bring everyone
new.
onto the same. No, it's not. It's not.
The age old.
No, but it
Argument.
grabbed traffic, it grabbed opportunity last year, and the governor hasn't necessarily been excited about it, which is another reason why I think it hasn't passed yet.
Is the fact that Illinois can expect a decrease of federal money coming through
I
Illinois
do think,
of any concern? I mean,
yeah,
number one, the pension. Number two, what I thought you might mention was if the state's getting less money from the Fed,
Yeah.
we're already fighting about trying to get something back. We're never gonna get anything back from them. They're gonna take more of them.
well, or they're gonna find different ways to simply say, we'll get that to you when we can.
Or they'll push something they're doing now down to us.
Yeah, that's practical and real. I do think the state is also being mindful of the fact that federal funding changes will significantly impact their own ability to afford their own pension
Right.
costs, their own pension costs. So everybody's feeling their way through. So it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot happening in Springfield right now. It's the beginning of the legislative session. We're getting daily emails now from the Northwest Municipal Conference, kind of giving updates on I think there were 5,200 bills introduced in Springfield across the entire myriad of everything that the state touches. Some of them are innocuous, some of them we like, some of them are not great. But this is the benefit of us being as involved in the Northwest Municipal Conference, and the Northwest Municipal Conference being seen really as such a strong player in Springfield. So
State is also facing its own struggles, pension and federal funding aside, they're struggling to balance their own budget.
yeah, although it's not as bad as they were expecting it to be. The governor's budget address, everyone was anticipating, $3 billion deficit, and it turned into $500 million. So, which is a much more palatable number. They can find $500 million, but 3 is harder. 3 is harder. So yeah, it's, if it's not one thing, it's another.
Circling back to your question, Dudley, I think this committee's analysis of financial policies will likely look different. I think we'll be looking at it from a different lens. We may or may not have more clarity at the time that we review them. But there may be some things that the committee would like to consider in terms of hardening our own financial situation and just in the face of uncertainties. We may look at the fund balance policy again. We may look at some of our other financial policies differently, depending on what happens with the pension funding situation. When Howard and I met with the governor's rep a few months ago, the message we got was there will be something passed. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. So there may be a need to bring the village's actuary back in and revisit our own pension funding policy to see if we need to make any changes there based off of whatever is passed.
I mean, they're also talking about pushing out dates, remember that 2040 date is still sitting out there where you got to be 90% funded. They have resurrected the idea of pushing it to 2050 or 2060. And we've been advocating for that because it's arbitrary. The date itself is arbitrary, the percentage to some degree less, but it's just, I think to Nikki's point, we may have to think differently overall. One of the things we're doing in this budget process is starting to rethink the capital funding structure as well, right? So home rule is coming into play pretty significantly because we may have to shift a significant portion away from operating our capital expenses away from operating and into debt. So we, those are tools available to us that we didn't have last year, right? And I think we want to be very cautious and conscious about what that means. It may push out capital investment to in certain areas. It may cause us to prioritize things somewhat differently. It may look at operations and how we, work through the staffing needs that we have organizationally. I think it's Nikki and I have said this to each other a lot, is that we can't overreact either. We have to be somewhat conscious that there is so much unknown that it's hard to tie ourselves to something either on a concern or a comfort and be, hopeful that whatever direction we take is going to be practical for the foreseeable future. It may only be practical for a very brief time, and we may have to rethink. So again, I will ask everybody, and our staff is going to have to do this too. We're going to have to get back into a COVID mindset, where we may have to be comfortable with setting something in March and changing it in April and changing it in May and changing it in on May 15th and changing it on May 30th and changing it on June 6th, right? That was the environment we lived in for, a solid 18 months through COVID. That could repeat itself over and over again. So, the resilience of the organization is strong from the standpoint of financially strong. We have options available to us that we've never had before. We want to be very careful about how we use those options, but I think we are better positioned in 2025 than we would have been if this was happening in 2023.
Affordability will be a factor, and there has been pressure on the tax exemption of government bonds introduced at the federal level. So the Government Finance Officers Association is leading a nationwide effort to educate legislators on how important tax exempt bond funding is. If that were to take hold and we wouldn't be able to issue debt at a tax exempt level, that could mean 50 basis points more, it could mean 100 basis points more. So that may change the way that we start to look at the 10-year CIP. If that legislation takes hold, we'll frankly be able to afford less.
Well,
unless we make some changes to our revenue structure.
The federal government loan structures that have always been available to us through the EPA and others may go away as well, right? So today we have still a large EPA loan, that the village entered into in 2012 that paid for a $5 million water main improvement on Sheridan Road. Options like that may not, and it's like 1%. It's immensely cheap money. Options like that may go away. They may just not exist. I mean, the reality is the tax structure of the federal government is being completely, shaken up in a snow globe right now. And what settles out is going to be fascinating. I mean, there's a proposal to cap income taxes, above 150K of annual income. I don't know if that's going to take hold. There's been comments about, how tips and Social Security and pensions are taxed. All of that could change. None of it could change. Some of it could change. What that means for federal dollars and how they circulate through the remainder of the economy is going to be interesting. And frankly, I would say the area that I do think about is that state and local government may take on roles that the federal government at one time handled. That will be difficult. We think about it from a cybersecurity standpoint. We think about it from the EPA and water management. We think about it for stormwater management. We sit on a huge natural resource. The Great Lakes is suddenly a very interesting thing to Washington. We don't know what's going to happen with neighboring countries, and the water rights that are tied to the Great Lakes Compact that manages how much water can be removed from the Great Lakes system. That could all change. And if that changes, that could change lots of decision-making on our part relative to our own water plant and whether or not our allocation is greater, less, different, not at all different. Again, when I say all of these things, it's to give you a little bit of a sense of there is a cascade effect to every action that the federal government takes. Some of those cascades are minor or insignificant or something that doesn't ever touch us, but there are things that could. So that's why where I say we can't overreact is that it's a little like drinking from Niagara Falls if you do that. And we have to be very conscious to not over respond until there's clearer direction and something that we can generally rely upon. But, you know, I'm not in a position right now, I don't think Nikki would say it either, I don't want to speak for you, where we feel like we have to make major changes to what we have planned right now. I think we're generally comfortable that we're sufficiently liquid and we're sufficiently capable of adjusting if we need to in the near future.
I don't think anybody was suggesting running off and making drastic decisions while we still don't know what the facts are gonna be. You mentioned in our meeting yesterday, we're lucky in that, well, in addition to the fact that you didn't mention this, but we're lucky in the fact that y'all work for us. And, you know, this is a great group of people that have to manage these problems. But we're in good financial state to start with. We're very solid shape. We are very leanly staffed for everything this village does. Still can't believe we have, what, 106, 107 people if we were fully staffed. So there's no bloat. And the fact of the matter is the local economy, which affects everything from permit revenue to sales taxes to et cetera, share of income taxes, whatnot, you know, is still, of all the people who are going to be hurt, will probably be hurt less. Things turn south. It's a practical matter in this area. So we have a little bit of cushion there, but the big killers to me that could be walking down the street are things like the pension, where they just forget the fact that we were completely bankrupt. And they would try to do something to prevent that from continuing to happen and slow the bleeding.
Every time I meet with any of our representatives, I walk in there with a gasoline can, pour it on myself, and threaten to light it.
He does.
Every time. You know, so we're doing what we can do.
Yeah.
We don't have the oomph of labor unions. We don't. But we, you know, all and I think most of the other municipalities doing this.
Everyone is.
So, and we'll see, but I don't feel like Pritzker is our enemy. I think he's probably holding back a little bit because I know he sort of got credit for straightening out the financial house. So part of the pitch always to his people is, you got credit for this. You're going to
throw it away.
You let them do this and they're going to ruin your reputation.
Yeah, right.
So, but, you know, so we're doing everything we can.
No, understood. But I think that one obviously is a huge one. But even a lot of other things that we don't even know what they're going to be, again, because of the knock-on effect of, well, the feds are going to give the state less money for, heaven forbid, Medicaid or whatever. And they're going to go find most of that money somewhere because Mrs. and Mrs. Smith are going to get taken care of. Right? And they don't want their rural hospitals to shut. So it'll come back on all the municipalities, I think. So that's kind of what I worry about, but it's, you know, no, you can't know what it'll be and what other things can happen. The fact that we have a lot of our money earmarked for capital projects, not just the ones we're doing now and committing to, but in the future, that in itself gives you some flexibility because at the end of the day, that street may not be in the best shape. But if you wait a year, right? I mean, there's some leeway just built into that. So I'm not worried, but I'm very glad that we're all paying close attention. And I'm also hoping that at the end of the day, you know, 6 months from now, a lot of this stuff will turn out to have been, you know, worked out in general. The economy as a whole is doing just fine. And it's very difficult to believe that so many people's eyes are being born
that they would allow it to just fall off a cliff. Just doesn't strike.
It's easy to economy to do, but when you run a deficits at 106% of GDP, though, if we ever decide to not add $1 trillion of debt federally every 100 days, it'll slow.
It's true.
You know, so I mean, like, but we can't control that here.
No. All right, well, that went off on a tangent.
Yeah. Positive note, I might add, I foolishly tried to read the entire report from the bond rating agency.
That's not foolish. It's just overachieving people. Not foolish.
Quite long and really in depth, but one of the things that they complimented us on was this group. And they like the fact that we get together on a regular basis and talk about this kind of thing. And that it helps.
It's very.
All right, then if there are no other comments, and thank you all for sitting through that. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.